Welcome back, everybody, to the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers, thinkers, and just doers, all people that are creating success stories across different areas of their life. And so we've talked to lots of entrepreneurs, we've talked to lots of CEOs, athletes, just people doing really interesting things in their space, find out a little bit about what they're doing, and hopefully take away some from their story, but also just things that we can apply to our own lives as well. And so today's guest is somebody who's really great at being able to help people stand out in a really crowded world. And so Tamar Lyons is with us today. She's the founder of Lyons Digital Marketing. She helps brands kind of generally show up out there, but show up boldly, I guess, from that standpoint. She's got a background in radio and TV and social media management, and brings that energy to the marketing space. She's also a podcast host herself, so she's done kind of some of this stuff. So we'll make sure what we kind of talk about that towards the end as well too. Tamar, and then just a passionate advocate for storytelling and being able to own your own voice. So things that a lot of people who are listening to this podcast now, I think, can take some away from that. So first of all, thanks very much for taking the time. I know things have been busy for you, Tamar, and so again, thanks for taking the time with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat and dive into this conversation.
Yeah, well, why don't we start it a little bit? You've had a real kind of interesting path to get to where you are today, and I did mention kind of radio, TV, and social media management roles and things like that, and now running Lyons Digital Marketing. So, tell us a little bit about your pathway here and pathway to owning kind of an agency as being kind of your logical step there.
Yeah, totally. So my story, I think, is very unconventional, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs can probably relate to that. So I started off in radio and television, like you said, and I was working for a big broadcaster in Canada, and then I was working for a smaller production company, and that was before like pre-COVID era.
Mhm.
And so, COVID hit, I'd say like in my second year in the workforce. And I was working for a small production company at the time, and I was also managing my boss's social media presence. And they were a pretty big influencer and yeah, like a thought leader.
Mhm.
And so what I was loving is that I had kind of I'd studied storytelling, and I was always doing storytelling in the television world, but getting to translate that in marketing and in social media was really cool because you were taking long stories and really condensing them and still having a lasting and large impact. So I did that there, and then COVID hit, and I started realizing, we had to take everything and turn it digital. We weren't able to film any television shows. We weren't able to go out and do the regular, content that we were doing for TV. We really had
Mhm.
to connect that into social. And so I led that. I did that for the company that I was working at the time. And then I started to realize, there's a whole world where I can do this for myself, work less, have
Mhm.
bigger impact, and obviously, make more money. And so I ended up, this was, I'd say, like 1 year into COVID. I ended up quitting my full-time job and starting, I didn't even try to start an agency. I actually just was like, I want to do this as a freelancer. I just want to manage small businesses' social media accounts. And that was a time when so many businesses were needing it. I actually was working with a lot of businesses in the allied health space. So they
Mhm.
actually could not have people in person. We're talking like massage therapists, physiotherapists, things like that. And I was helping them create online programs and funnel people into that through social media. And so it was kind of experimental because I had only ever done social media for like big personalities, never
Yeah.
really monetize that into like, get customers in business. But I got to learn that and it was great. And so I started off doing that on a freelance basis. And then I just got so many referrals because I was good at what I was doing that literally, I think within 3 months, I had to hire an assistant. I was making 4 times more in my as a freelancer than I was in my full-time job. And so obviously I was like, this is the only way. I'm only going forward. And I kind of just kept going and grew it. And now we're, almost 5 years into it. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. Such a great feeling.
Very cool. And you mentioned that it was like, okay, I kind of realized this. Is there like, because some entrepreneurs say there was this kind of epiphany of, oh, okay, I decided I just didn't want this anymore. I really wanted this. Is there something like that, or was it just a slow build that you realized that, okay, the skills that I'm building here, I could do something kind of on my own? How did it work for you?
So that's actually a really good question. I didn't have that internally, but I think the reason why I didn't is because I didn't actually know any entrepreneurs. I grew up like no one in my family is an entrepreneur. it was very much, you work the same job for, 20 years, then you go on to the
Yeah.
next one. And I'm really loyal and I'm a really, really hard worker. But I guess what I was feeling was like, I was feeling like my talents weren't being utilized wherever I was. And especially in the TV industry, you do have to work your way up that ladder. It's not the same in like climbing the corporate ladder, but if you want to be a storyteller and you want to be producing and filming content and filming television shows, you have to be working as, an assistant for 2 years and then you get to go up and then you get to go up. So you're spending so much time not even doing the thing that you like doing before you get to.
Hmm.
So I think I was kind of feeling like I have so much potential and I have so much energy and so much creativity that I could be offering the world. And I'm like not tapping into that. And I want to. So I think that was the feeling. But I definitely think the shift from going from being employee to entrepreneur was I had this one client that I was working with on a freelance basis while I was working full time.
Hmm.
And I just remember feeling so burned out one day. And her and I, we used to have meetings at 6:30 a.m. and like 9 p.m. because it was after my shifts when I was working.
Yeah.
I remember one day, like a 9:30 p.m. meeting, we're talking and we're going over her social media for her clinic. And I just said, like, I'm so done. Like I broke down to her, which maybe wasn't super professional, but it's fine. She's still a client today.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she said, Tamar, do you want to be living a mediocre life? And it really stopped me because I said, no, of course I don't want to live a mediocre life. And she said, you're making decisions that are leading you to live a mediocre life. So I think you just need to sit with that. And I did that, like, was a big aha moment for me because I was like, yeah, I'm making mediocre decisions and therefore I am currently living a mediocre life. And I said, no, that's not me. That's not in alignment with who I want to be. And literally the next day I quit my job. And so I kind of needed that reframing from somebody that I looked up to, having somebody believe in me when I didn't necessarily believe in myself. And the rest is history.
Yeah. And so you start an entrepreneurial journey, which, when you've come from a corporate life into, in a big corporate life, because yeah, as you mentioned, when you're in a large organization, there's a lot of steps. You don't necessarily get to do all of the things that you want to do early. How did you learn, I guess, and how do you continue to learn? Because this is the thing that if you had mentioned you didn't necessarily have lots of entrepreneurial mentors at that time. So how did you do that, and how do you continue to do that when things change so quickly in your space?
Yeah. So in terms of like the social media skills, I definitely think like I had studied radio and television, and I specialized in video production.
Mhm.
So in terms of, I think that really set me apart in the beginning because when I started my agency, I think Instagram was just starting like videos on Instagram. So it
Mhm.
was, or sorry, like Reels was
Reels,
like
yeah.
probably 1 or 2 years into my agency. So because I had like a professional training and background in that, my video quality that I was doing for my clients was always superior to, someone who was kind of learning as they were going because I was using, top quality products and I knew what I was doing. So I think that was one thing that kind of set me apart. I think also because I was working with entrepreneurs and small businesses, I was working directly with the business owner. And so I got to meet so many incredible entrepreneurs and I still get to work with so many incredible entrepreneurs. Now we've shifted a little bit more, like, 5 years in, where we're doing a lot more personal branding and running, different entrepreneurs, thought leadership on their LinkedIn. And I'm really getting more of, I guess, like the intimate thoughts that they have and understanding the process of how they think in their business. So because we're creating their actual thought leadership content for them. So I think I get to see the way that they think, which is really cool. When before it was more promote the business, promote the product, and kind of look at it from that lens. And so I've just been very lucky that I get to work with such incredible entrepreneurs because I learn from them. And I always just kind of put myself in rooms where I'm, the smallest person in the room because I don't want to learn from people, I want to learn from people who have done it and they're, see different ways that they think and how they've solved problems. And I always ask entrepreneurs, like, how do you think? What do you think about when you wake up in the morning? What's your thoughts before you go to bed? When you have a problem, what are you thinking about? What's your creative process? Because I want to get those details because, most people we kind of operate in, in a way where, this is what I've always been doing. But if I'm going to always take the same actions, I'm going to have the exact same results as a result of that. So I like to ask people who have done things differently, just kind of like their process and just kind of like always be open to seeing how other people do things.
Yeah, yeah. And so now that, I mean, you said early on kind of reels were just starting and things like that. And so you've had that kind of benefit. I think most people listening are probably like, oh my gosh, it's such a noisy space now. Like everything is, there's so much out there, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram or any of those things. Um, from your perspective, how does somebody or how do you help somebody stand out on those platforms where there's just so much going on compared to what there even was, 5 years ago, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Absolutely. And this is going to be such a cliche answer, but it's true. It's you need to find what your authentic voice is. And then you get to come up with a creative way to leverage that. And so, everyone can say, oh, it's all about authenticity. It kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. Like authenticity within a viral framework. So we know there are certain things that work well. Marketing strategy is marketing strategy for a reason. There's sales psychology for a reason. You do need to infuse those things into your content, but you do need to come at it from an authentic place. So, if you go into ChatGPT, you can get a year's worth of content or Claude or whatever AI model you want to use. You can get years worth of content, but it's not going to land with people. It's not going to be good because it's missing that human element. What you have to do is come up with a way, what are things that you stand for? What are the pillars or the topics or the pieces of content that you want to represent and speak through your content? And then, the content you can create and you can work and you can, see you can kind of, build your content library, put that out, use AI to help you refine it and post it and all of those things. But at the core, you really have to understand, what do I believe? What do I stand for? And what does my brand stand for? Because at the end of the day, people want to work with people that they align with. So saying, be authentic, of course, come from an authentic lens, but what are those things you believe in? So, generally speaking, if we're working with a client in a specific industry, what I'll have them do as a first exercise is say, okay, what are some typical beliefs that people have in your industry, whether, you're a business coach or, something like that? What is the typical rhetoric that you hear and what are your thoughts on it? And I let them kind of, go for a little bit, talk about something that they don't like in their space. And then we say, great, let's take this and let's change it and let's put a positive spin on it and like let's make this your thing and we'll find that. So I would just say you really have to get down to what is it that I believe as a business, as a person, as a brand, and how can I put this into my content, because that's going to really help you create those pillars and therefore communicate that into your content.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I guess that's the one thing too, that a lot of people are hearing this and maybe that's their thing they had to develop, because a lot of entrepreneurs, that's not a comfortable space for them, or and it's something that people realize has to happen, because people are used to maybe branding for their business and how important that is. But it's also, I know that you spend a lot of time also branding thought leadership and some of those things with people as well. Do you find, like, when you're dealing with oftentimes very successful or people that are at a certain level because of their business acumen, how comfortable is it for them to be able to be, because you have to be a little more vulnerable to be authentic? How do you get past that with people that maybe that's not the most comfortable space for them?
I love that question. And I would say this is probably the number one thing we experience with all of our clients. And a lot of our clients will actually say that working with us is therapeutic for them. It's like exposure therapy because everyone that we're working with is an incredible entrepreneur. They've accomplished great things. We don't really work with clients where they're, coming to the market.
Hmm.
They're profitable, their businesses are doing well. They want to expand their impact. So a lot of these people are so not used to being in the limelight or in the spotlight. And so it's so funny. I just had a onboarding call with a client who was saying, like, me doing this is so uncomfortable, but I know I have to do it because I have to get my story out there. And so what I would say the best way to kind of not I guess at the end of the day you do have to get over it. I think
Hmm.
it really comes down to the mindset, and it's understanding that you've already built a business that's thriving and doing well. You have a proof of concept. You already have clients. Like clearly you're doing something right. Now, really what it's about is understanding that it's because of you. Like you cannot keep yourself small. You're here to be of service. And the more people that know about you, the more people who consume your content, the more visibility we can gain for you, the more people you can help. I never look at it as, oh, if we put out your content, you're going to get more clients. Obviously, that's a byproduct, and that's obviously what everyone wants. They want an ROI, they want to make money on their marketing efforts for sure. But we have to look at it as you're here to be of service. And the more that you take up space, the more that you own your power and you own your corner of the internet, the more people you have the capacity to help because then they can know about you and find you and then you can change their lives through the services that you offer them. So I always like to start there with the framing is that, what you have to give is of incredible value. And by not taking up space and by not showing up on social media and by not, expanding your audience and holding yourself back, you're actually stopping people from experiencing your own magic and what it is that you do for them. So I always like to start with that frame. And then it's a lot easier because you see it almost as a duty. I have to show up. I have to tell people about what I do because I'm going to change their life.
Mhm. Wow, very cool. Um, and I guess I'll shift it to you for a second here. Is that and you as well as probably any other entrepreneur who's listening who's already taking lots away from that kind of stuff. But the other side would be we talk a lot about how do you kind of create kind of whole life success. And you had mentioned that you moved into entrepreneurship for a reason and because you wanted kind of more from that standpoint. Um, how do you balance those things? I mean, how do you make sure, I mean, that you've got a life both inside and outside of work, and maybe whether that's through integrating them, I don't know, but just from your standpoint, how does that work for you? Like, how do you kind of meld those things together?
Yeah, totally. So I would say it's really coming back to your why. Like, why are you doing all of this? And I know for myself, I have it's a whole story. I don't know if we even have time for it today, but I can touch on it a little bit.
Sure.
Started my business, and I actually ended up going through a divorce when I was about like 2 years through my business. And the way that I had intentionally set up my business was that I was never going to be time dependent, and I was never going to be location because of where I was at in my business really supported me in, my healing journey post my divorce. It helped me in allowing me to even have the capacity to leave a marriage that was not, for my best self.
Hmm.
And so, I actually picked up and I was traveling for basically 2 years. Because of this business that I had built. But I was grappling and struggling with this idea of, I have this business, it's consuming me. I'm spending all hours, working 20 hours a day, like in my business, not sleeping, not eating, not taking care of myself,
Yeah.
or living as my best self. But yeah, I really had to get back to that understanding of why did I start my business? It was for freedom. It was so that I could do all the things that I want to do and have the life that I want to have. And so, if my business is generating an insane amount of money, but I'm not getting to live the life that I want to live, is that money actually worth it? Or is it worth it for me to just be making, a little bit less, but then having the freedom to travel and having the freedom to hang out with my friends whenever I want and having the freedom to relax and take a day off when I need to or spend time with family or loved ones. And I just had to really get back to that and understand where it was. And so I think, yeah, it's so easy when you're building something that you're passionate about and that you love. You just get caught up in it without realizing because it doesn't feel like work. It really does feel like this is what I love. It's my passion. I love doing this. And, you kind of get on that grind. But I definitely, I was doing the digital nomad kind of lifestyle. I was living in Mexico for about, 7 months and on and off. And I was feeling, I came to a realization that, I lived on the beach and I hadn't been to the beach in 3 months. And I'm like, I have this amazing opportunity that most people will never have in their lives to live here. And I'm not even utilizing it. I can't even take, 30 minutes for myself. The beach was literally in my backyard. Can't even go to sit and read a book for 30 minutes. And so I really had to just plan my day to prioritize those things. And so I think entrepreneurs who are grinding and building their businesses, I think number one, it's get back to what your why is. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this for yourself? Are you doing this for your family? Are you doing this for freedom? Whatever it might be, understand what that is and then reverse engineer your time around it. So, it's not, there's also the trade-off too of I'm going to put in 10 years now so that I don't have to work 10 years from now. So I think it's really just connecting what is your end goal? What's the reason you started your business on a personal level? And then how can you kind of make those shifts?
And so for yourself then, are you a goal setter? Like, are you a write everything down kind of person? Do you have to be very specific around your day to make sure that you give yourself those times? How does that work for you?
Totally. Yeah, I'm all about optimization and it's all like through experience. So, yeah, I time block everything. My morning is very, very sacred. I have like very structural things that I do, extreme structural things that I do. My calendar is always like blocked off. But a recent change that I've done, just given my lifestyle now, is like after 3 p.m., like nobody can book with me. Like I need like 3 to 5 p.m. just to chill, do my own thing. I love like cooking healthy foods, things like that. I want to cook dinner. Like that to me is now my priority. And so I've shifted around my schedule to do that. I used to have like, and it depends on the stage of life that I'm in and what I'm doing and all of those pieces. But 100%, I had to learn what works for me. But the beautiful thing about it is that you also learn when your optimal times are. So again, I've been doing this for almost 5 years. I now know, okay, after 2 p.m., I'm a basket case. I cannot have meetings. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be helpful to any of my clients if they meet with me after 2 p.m. You're not getting a good strategy from me. You're getting sleepy tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you book with me at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is the time that I give my clients, between 10 and 1.
Yeah.
I am optimal. I am awake. I am so creative. I've got everything. So it's just really important to me, understanding how much energy is required for every task in my business and really planning my days around that. And now I actually have assistants who help me with that too. So they'll say, nope, tomorrow you have a call. Someone asked for a call at this time, but I know that's not your optimal energy level. We're going to switch it to the next day. But really just getting everybody on board with it can be really, really helpful in getting things done and really in an efficient way.
And it is interesting that when you're in a creative space, whether that's even more important for some of those people that need to kind of tap into something that's maybe even a little bit different that way. Does that make a difference from your end? Like, do you find like if you're
100%.
outside of that, does your creativity just kind of blow up, or how does that work?
100%. And then this is even, I think, an interesting thing about how I run my team. So, my employees, I actually tell them, like, I don't care when you are getting the work done. Here's the deadline. You know what has to get done. You know what the daily tasks are. You know what the weekly tasks are. You know what the monthly tasks are. And you know when each individual deadline is. And I don't want to micromanage or, tell people you have to create this content within this day because there's no way to decide, like, I'm going to feel creative today. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And so we
Yeah.
give ourselves, long blocks of time. So that way, no client, we're not like working the day before, obviously, to get content done for a client. We have, we're in a cycle, we have a process, but within that, there is space. Maybe, you schedule for my employees, maybe they've scheduled Monday for them to do the content, but they're not feeling their most creative self. So, they can do it Tuesday, or they can do it if they're more creative at midnight, they can do it at midnight. They don't have to do it during the day. So I think that's been really good for productivity on my team because we don't actually base ourselves based on here's how many hours I put into work. It's here's how much, it's all about the deliverable. It's about the actual end product and everything gets done. And we reward productivity, not hours worked. Because I think when you work on an hours worked basis, people don't feel great. And it's like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna do 5 tasks today and drag them out throughout the day rather than I have to do all of this in this week and I'm going to get it all done. And it doesn't matter if I get it done in 1 hour or if I get it done in 15 hours, it has to get done.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're starting to see that whole pull back to come back to the office, do it during this time, that kind of thing right now, and there's a real back and forth about when is that really productive, and I mean I would suggest no, but and I would assume from that you probably would as well. But maybe the other part that I'd like to touch on a little bit too is that you've talked about the clients that you deal with are often very kind of high profile, kind of high level in entrepreneurs or CEOs or things like that. Um, but how about those people that are maybe listening that are in that space where they're kind of newer and are so with the CEOs we talked about almost that fear of visibility part a little bit. But how about other people that are just trying to build their to show their expertise at a time where they may feel like a bit of that kind of imposter syndrome stuff where they just feel that I can't go out there and pretend I'm an expert because I'm still learning and things like that. How would you suggest building your own personal brand that you've done a good job being able to do that? How do you do that to somebody who maybe is feeling the opposite, where they just feel like, okay, I can't come out, put myself out there that way because I just feel like I'm too new in the space.
My suggestion is to just rip the band-aid off. Nobody who is great at this was great at it starting out. And the other thing too is just to remind yourselves that anyone who's great at these things, like these thought leaders that you see, the big LinkedIn influencers, the big, all those people, they all started with an audience of zero. All of them. And not one of them is going to look at you starting out and say, oh, they're not great. They're going to say, good for you for starting. I was once there, whether that was a year ago, whether that was 5 years ago, whether that was 10 years ago. Nobody who's ahead of you is looking back and saying, do you see that person, what they're doing? Oh, it's so cringy to see how they're trying. No, they're going to be cheering you on. The only people who are going to respond to you in a negative way, if you even get that, are going to be people who are just not doing the thing. And you don't want to be in that camp. You want to be in the camp of the people who've already done it and are then beyond you, which is goes back to what I was saying about putting myself in rooms with people who have already done the things that I want to do, because those people will be cheering you on and they'll give you advice as you go on your journey. But I think one of the best things I ever did for myself and my business and just even my life in general is when you show up in your content, you get so, even when it's uncomfortable, you learn number one to stretch yourself, because being an entrepreneur is all about doing things that are uncomfortable. You didn't get here by staying small and staying comfortable. There's no growth in the comfort zone. And so put yourself in a situation where you're forced to grow, and it's not going to be good at the beginning. Like, keep that in mind. Your first 10 pieces of content are going to suck. They're going to be bad, but you need to have that so that way you can get to your 20th piece of content, which is going to get better. And then you can look and see, oh, what resonated with people? What's working? What's not working? And you can continue to grow from there to get to a point of being good. But you don't get to good until you actually go through the phase of being comfortable with it being bad. And so I think, yeah, it's really like learning to get comfortable with the discomfort, but also really recognizing that like people don't actually care. Like, no one's gonna watch your video if it's bad. Like, they're just gonna scroll on. It's a bad video. Okay, cool. I watched it for 2 seconds. I forget about it. I'm watching a million other videos after. So really not taking it personally. But I think another piece within that is also understanding you're going to get better. And it's actually going to help you in all areas of your business. Because if you get used to talking about your business, it starts to flow off your tongue eventually. And then when you show up in sales calls, or when you show up in networking events or on podcasts or any other platform where you're going to get visibility or you're going to meet people and make connections, you're going to be able to represent your brand so much better. You're going to be able to talk about your product so much better because you're so used to doing it every day. So I would say make yourself a challenge and say, I'm going to make a video every day. I'm going to write a post every day. I'm going to show up in my Instagram stories for 15 seconds every day. And it doesn't matter how good you are at it. It just matters that it's done. And I promise the more you do that, the more you build off of it, you're going to look back in 30 days and you're going to be amazed at what you're able to accomplish and how articulate you can be about your brand and your service and what it is that you're doing. So I think a 30-day challenge is a great idea. I just came up with that on the spot, but I do think
Yeah.
a 30-day challenge is a good idea.
Well, and I do like that you talked about how those very senior people that are maybe doing it now, I think a lot of people don't realize how open they are to being helpful and to because I think people are afraid sometimes to come forward and connect with people like that, and not understanding that they're often very open to sharing their expertise and bringing other people along from that standpoint. I think most people are afraid to do it, and the ones that aren't are the ones that actually make those connections early in their career too.
Totally. And those are the best people because those people are rooting for you. Anyone who's gone through this, anyone who's an entrepreneur who's gone through challenges and came out on the other side, they are rooting for the people who are starting out. They're so excited. I have friends or colleagues that I've met through LinkedIn that are killing it in their businesses. They're 40 years ahead of me and probably places that I don't even know if I could ever get to that level. And I keep in touch with them and I'll check in with them and I'll say, "Oh, here's a small win that I had. Here's this." And literally they are so proud of me and so happy, even though they've done this years ago. And it's like, "Oh yeah, I do this every day." But to know that, the people who have already done the things are rooting for you, like you can use their belief in you to help you get to that place. So I just think it's really like people don't really care that much. And I think we have this idea of like imposter syndrome and people are going to look at me and make fun of me and they're not going to accept me. These fears have no basis because at the end of the day, people are we're all focused on ourselves. We're not
Mhm.
focused on making fun of other people. And anyone who is that is not your person. So really just focus on your mission and just doing it, even though it's uncomfortable.
All right. And so I know actually you even mentioned a bit of the 30-day challenge thing, but maybe I'll kind of throw it out there generally. What you use is totally up to you. But if if there's somebody out there who's maybe early in this stage and trying to figure out, okay, how do I begin to maybe either spruce up my brand or build a brand from a personal standpoint? Do you have a couple of tips that that of ways they can kind of reset that or kind of take a look at how they build something like that?
Totally. So I think what I would start with is what are the things that I can monetize? So this is going to sound interesting because I know we're not doing this for monetization, but like
Hmm.
what are the things in my business that are monetizable? So for example, if someone is a business coach, you're selling one-to-one, you're selling group coaching, or you're selling a 1 hour call, whatever it might be. Think about those things and then think about, okay, how do I kind of reverse engineer the funnel so that eventually I'll funnel people into that. I'm not going to be, every post isn't going to be, hey, here's my 1 hour call, obviously, but
Yeah.
have those in mind so that your content actually has a flow and a purpose that for where you're going to funnel people eventually. From there, think about who's my ideal client? Who are the people that I'm trying to work with? And how do those people need to be spoken to in content? What resonates with them? Then you want to go and say, okay, what are my pillars? So, what are questions or problems or things I've heard from my ideal client, and how can I generate content that speaks to their symptoms of their problems, not just the pain points? So, what are they feeling as a result of having those pain points, and how can I create pillars of content around that? And then getting even more granular is what are things that I believe in, and what are things that are common in my industry or in the space that people think one way. What is my difference? How can I leverage that difference? What do I see differently? And how can I really, really harp on that and then infuse that into all of my content? But I think a really, really important piece is that you want to talk to your audience like you're speaking directly to them, not, about just a general you. Always try to speak to, like, come up with a persona of one person and speak to that person in all of your content. And I think you're going to start to see, when you're just starting out, you have to test. But I think that's a really great starting point. And then don't be afraid to pull the trigger and just post. The best content is content that gets posted. If it doesn't get posted, it's not helping you because it doesn't give you any data, it doesn't give you anything that, nothing you can take from that to understand what you can do to improve. So I would say, have those structural pieces in place, but then you do have to post. You do have to actually get it out there so you can refine and optimize as you go.
Great. Great advice, and I think that whole part about the best content is the stuff you actually put out. That's great. So if people are wanting to follow your content, because you've got some great content, just kind of yourself individually, but as well as obviously the organization, what are some of the best ways to be able to follow you and maybe find out more about your organization as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform right now. So you can find me on LinkedIn at
Mhm.
Tamar Lyons. And I also love Instagram. So on Instagram, you can find me. It's at Lyons Digital Marketing. And my website also is lionsdigitalmarketing.ca if anyone wants to connect there as well.
All right, and we will put all those in the show notes too, so that way, if you missed it, just connect through there. If you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that right now. We have great people every week, just like Tamar, and again, tons of great advice all the way through here. So hopefully, if everybody's listened through, they might even kind of scroll back and kind of do a couple more listens because there's some great stuff in there. So again, thanks for taking the time today. Really valuable stuff, and it'll be great for people to connect with you and see what you're doing over the next little while too tomorrow. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This is really awesome.
All right, and everybody else, we will talk again soon on Big Idea, Big Moves.